I've gotten some requests for video on an Airstream update, and so this is my update for you. There is none. And the reason there is none is for the following reasons that I'm going to list. Why renovating an RV is so challenging, and why you may think getting into RV renovation that you have all these dreams that look a lot like Instagram, you'll have no problem fulfilling in a timely manner. And I'm here to basically tell you that your dreams are crushed. So if this is a video that you're not wanting to see yet because you're not ready to face reality, then tune out. But if you can handle the truth, this is the video for you. Some of you may already know that we bought this Airstream in 2018, and we had great plans for it. We hoped that within at least a year, if not 2 years, we would be living in it off-grid somewhere on property as we built a family homestead. It is now 2022. The Airstream is completely gutted, but clearly we are not living in it. Otherwise, we would be living in an Airstream with no floor, no air conditioning, no heat, and no insulation with a toddler, which would be basically illegal, I think. And definitely Child Protective Services would have come after us by now. So in this video, I want to tell you what the top reasons are that we have come to a stalemate on the Airstream. Not the end, just looking over the cliff, not sure which direction we want to jump, but basically jumping will be required in one way or another. The first thing you have to think about when renovating an RV is money. Now, you may have the money to buy an older RV. Our plan was to buy an older one that we could buy with cash. We wouldn't have to go into debt. If we were to buy a brand new Airstream, they were priced at around $150,000. At the time we were looking, they're probably more expensive now with how popular RVs have become during COVID as well as inflation. And we just didn't want to get into debt. So we figured that we would slowly put money into it, and that with our ability and knowledge, and when I say our, I mean my husband's, we would eventually get this done debt-free. That was the plan. The problem, however, is that, well, right now, supplies are a lot more expensive than when we started. And you really need to kind of think about what your buffer is and price out, for instance, like us, if you're renting, how much money are you spending in rent versus what would you have paid originally on an Airstream that was of better quality? And so for us, we probably would have put tens of thousands of dollars into this Airstream at this point if we were to have equated that with rent. So in other words, if we had bought a better Airstream, we had paid more for it, but we lived in it right away, we would have put the money that we've put in rent over the last 4 years into the Airstream. So it's just something to think about. Also, like I said, think about the fact that costs may increase as you're working on it. How much expendable income do you have, and how will that affect your timeline? If you have to wait for supplies, are you going to end up spending more money renting, for instance? Like, we're in this situation right now that many people, I'm sure most people, could not have predicted. But here we are, nonetheless. Prices are high. Time is short, and supplies are rare, and it's not getting easier necessarily to find the stuff that we need. So really taking a hard look at the cost-benefit analysis of renovating versus buying something that you don't need to renovate, and what your time is worth, whether that is renting, if that's what you're doing right now, or paying on a mortgage, or whatever else it is. Your own job, how much money you would be putting into your own work if you weren't working on your RV. These are all things that I don't think we necessarily took seriously enough when we first bought it. We just looked at tag on the Airstream and we thought we can afford this. And then we just generally estimated what we were going to put into it, and we thought that'll be fine. But we just didn't foresee how things were going to change in the next few years as we were working on it. One of the things that has changed for us is that we had a child, and we left the city. We left Seattle. I quit my television news career, and we moved. Now, that was a great move for us as a family. We moved out to the country. We've loved life ever since living in the country on acreage and not in the city. But the first place we lived did not have a covered area for the Airstream. And we lived in a place that was very cold and got a lot of snow, which meant we left the city with this gutted Airstream, and we really haven't worked on it since because of the weather. Now, as you can see, we're now in an enclosed RV garage, but we're going to get to why we haven't started working on it yet in a second. This is all just to say weather is really something to consider when it comes to time, right? If you are going to get a lot of snow, winter goes from October to really April or May where we were. That's a lot of time that you're going to miss out on for renovating your RV. So think about your location. Where are you working on it? And what do you have available to you? Is there electricity? Is there a covered area not just for snow, but also for heat? You know, are you in an area where you could feel comfortable with your hands working, or is it going to be 15 below zero? Also, what about lighting and just all the things that you need when you're working on something? When, like I said, you need power, you may need an area with water. All those kinds of things are something to consider as well. The room that you might need to bring in other equipment, all that stuff. Now, next to location, obviously you have to have the skill. And it really matters if there's more than one person who's taking on this project, that you understand how you work as a team. I am a total moron when it comes to renovating anything, and especially an RV. I don't know what I'm doing, and it's been hard for me to be a support for Lynn as we've been working on this, because I literally have no clue. I have no clue how to renovate an RV. So he's the team lead. Now, on one hand, that can kind of be a good thing if you work well together. You know this person's the person in charge, and you just do what they say. And that actually doesn't work too terribly in the team effort or the team sport arena. However, if the team lead is gone, the project stops, and Lynn travels for work. And so when he's gone, the Airstream renovation stops. When he comes back, if he has other work he has to get done, we're not doing the Airstream renovation. So it's really important that you understand the support that you give each other if you're more than one person. And if you're just one person that's renovating this, can you do this on your own? Are you going to need to hire somebody or bring in a friend every once in a while for certain projects? Just charting out what you think needs to be done and when and who you need to bring in. Because say you're going to bring in your friend from Texas and you live in Washington, you want to maybe say, hey, Joe, let's figure this out for July, and tell Joe in July you want to bring him in to help you out. And that brings me to the next point, which is planning. Planning is really important. I think planning may be at the top next to the final thing I'm going to talk about, because I really have come to believe that when you're renovating something, and I think this probably goes for a house too, or maybe a car, but a car, you know, probably isn't as important because it's not something you're necessarily planning to move your family into, I hope. However, if you aren't waking up every day and planning what this project is going to look like on Tuesday I'm going to do this, on Saturday I'm going to do this, next week I'm going to do this, next month I'm going to do that, it's going to be very hard to succeed. Not only because you're going to need to chart out what kind of materials you need to order. So say you get to Tuesday and you're like, oh, Tuesday I wanted to do this, but you don't have the wood or you don't have the insulation or whatever else. You're not doing it on Tuesday. So one of the things I learned is that you really have to plan ahead. This has to be a job of itself where you're waking up, you're scheduling what you're going to do on a particular day, who you need to be there, what supplies you need to be there, and just be really specific and efficient about scheduling. Because say you don't keep your schedule, and that's okay, we're all human. If you at least know, okay, that I didn't get this done on this day, then you know how you're going to have to push back everything else. And like I said, you may have friends that are coming to help you. You need to figure out when you're going to change those plans as well as any supplies that you need to order, if there's something else that's delayed, how that's going to affect what your schedule looks like, and everything else like that. And the final most important thing to consider when renovating an RV is time. And when we were buying this RV, as we were looking for different options, the number one reason people were selling their RVs was because they did not have time to finish the renovation. And here we were thinking, we'll have time, we're different. But oh no, au contraire, my friends, we were not different than the people who were selling their Airstreams. Life happened to us too. We ended up having a child. Like I said, we've moved twice. And our businesses have changed considerably over the last couple of years. And this is something that you need almost to be a near full-time job if you want to get it done in a reasonable amount of time. It requires waking up in the morning, and instead of saying, oh, I'm going to sit back and have a cup of coffee and read the paper, and then maybe I'll do this or maybe I'll do that, you have to wake up and say, I'm having my cup of coffee and I am going out to the Airstream. And it's like the next thing you do besides like personal hygiene and taking care of your family. I'm telling you, it has to be almost a full-time job. And so if you're someone who's like, oh, I'm going to just make it a hobby, that's okay, but just recognize that it may take you a decade to finish. And that may sound extreme, but I'm not kidding you when I say that if this thing gets done within 10 years, I think I'll be happy. Because we're already 4 years in, and we've still got a ways to go on this thing. You know, I've tried to find other people that might take on this Airstream and finish it for us, because we're like, well, maybe we just need to pay somebody to finish it for us. But get this, now that living in these things or traveling in them is so popular, the people I've called are all booked out at least 2 years. So we figure, well, hopefully we'll get it done in a couple years. But honestly, when I made the calls last year, I didn't think we would still be in the same position 1 year later. So maybe I should make those phone calls. This is all just to say, if we had been listening to the people who are selling the Airstream saying things like, well, we had a kid and we just don't have time, or I have a job and I just don't have time, or all those things, maybe we would have thought about, do we really want to take on a project of this nature? But we were young, we were in love, we had big dreams of finishing this Airstream quickly, buying property, and honestly, it was a great idea, and it still is a great idea, and it's not totally over. I don't want to say that in this video. It's just that it didn't work out the way we thought it would, and life just doesn't work out the way often you think it is. And you know, if you're not prepared for that, it can cause all kinds of issues. If you're not willing to just kind of let go and just live one day at a time, then it can cause tension. You know, when are we going to finish? And how are we going to know what we're going to do next with property? And how are we going to make this decision? And what about this? And what about that? So you have to realize that it's kind of just take one day at a time, but also planning balance and understanding that there are going to be things that come up and you just have to roll with the punches and not punch each other, if you know what I'm saying, right? So anyway, this is just the half dozen challenges that we've come across and things that we probably should have taken into greater consideration before making the decision to renovate versus buy new. I hope this was helpful. If not, leave me a comment. If it was, also leave me a comment. Let me know what some of the challenges have been for you and your Airstream, or if you have any solutions to ours, or if you want to renovate our Airstream too. Leave me a comment for that as well. And we'll see you next time.